your sunglasses because the future is bright as fuck. Welcome, Luke. I don't think we've ever met before, not in person and not on like one-on-one calls, but I feel the alignment is strong, judging from the the conversation that we did have.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think we've met one-on-one for sure, but we've been in lots of calls together, and I've definitely felt an affinity to metagame in general and love what you guys are doing. And I think there's lots of alignment there.
Awesome. Yeah, happy to have you here. I had you on the list of the Meta Radio guests for a long time, and yeah, we're finally doing it. So that's good. Let's just get into it. Why are you here? Like not this conversation specifically, but like this space. Why are you sticking around? What draws you here?
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked right now because the thing that really pulled me into this space in 2017 was really getting to experiment with like, community-run organizations, decentralization, DAOs. And I worked at Aragon for 2.5 years, which was really awesome. Getting to kind of work on building a lot of DAO infrastructure. But it really took a long time to actually get to the point where I felt like you're seeing really like decentralized organizations start to like pop up and thrive. And in the past like 6 months or so, we've seen quite a few. The Sushi Swap stuff, the Yearn stuff, and of course OneHive, which I've been spending most of my time on recently and have been kind of slowly working on over the years. And Metagame and Raid Guild, like seeing a lot of these like organizations that really like have grassroots communities come first, and then all of the other stuff and investors kind of coming second. And I think that's a really powerful like shift that I hope to see kind of spread beyond just the crypto space, but into like wider world of startups and platforms as well.
Right. Things are finally happening. Like these they've been becoming real for the past, I guess, a few years. But like this past year has been incredible, like acceleration and all of that.
Yeah, it's massive change. Since getting into this space is like I remember in 2017 being super optimistic and being like, oh yeah, we can do DAOs, we can do all of this cool stuff. This is a game changer. And then as I got deeper and deeper into the space, I was like, oh, all of these things are broken. Nothing works. Like none of this infrastructure exists, and you kind of have to keep going further and further down the stack to find like, okay, what's the next building block to actually get to that like vision that you see. Like and I think a lot of people kind of go through that cycle when they kind of start going down the crypto rabbit hole. And we've made a lot of progress, at least since I've joined. And I'm sure for people that joined the community even before that have seen incremental progress. But it starts to feel now like we're getting to the point where some of these things are actually like being realized. Some of these things that like I don't know, I was inspired by when I first got into crypto.
Right. Yeah, they were just ideas, and then after a while there was the DAO, and then after that nothing happened for a long time. And yeah, I sort of see this like splitting into three eras. Like first it was the time of Bitcoin, where like decentralized money. Okay, that's cool. And then we moved on to the programmable decentralized money, which is like Ethereum, DeFi, and things like that. And I think we're finally entering into like the third era, which is like about decentralized organizations and like building all of these things in a decentralized way, and not just building decentralized things, but building them like as a traditional company.
Yeah, I'm really inspired by like Bitcoin and Ethereum from like a DAO perspective. I think that like the idea of using currency and a protocol to like bootstrap the efforts of all of these like miners or eventually stakers in the case of Ethereum, creating this like protocol that creates these economic incentives is really like the promise of decentralized coordination. And I think when we start looking at DAOs like Metagame and OneHive and some of the other like newer attempts at these things, the key difference is really that you're trying to incentivize human behavior in a much more broad and abstract way than simply like computing like hard math problems on a GPU, but you end up with a very similar structure.
Yeah, good point. Does it still kind of amaze you? Like, for example, we are talking here for this podcast, and while this is happening, the people in the community that you have started are having a meeting and they're building things like as we speak.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. One Hive has kind of taken on a life of its own, and there's projects that are springing up and work that's being done that I'm not even like aware of is happening until I see emerge. Right, supposed to change a DNS pointer later today to a landing page that I really didn't even know what was happening. It was like a working group that is formed around kind of marketing that took the initiative, and they did a really good job. I saw a preview yesterday, but totally blown away. Another group is like deciding they want to fork Aave on XDAI. I have zero involvement in that initiative, and it's really cool to see individuals in the community feeling empowered enough to take action and really like take the thing that's way bigger than me in a completely different direction.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of magical. When I just started Met again, I would wake up and then like I would check Discord, and then sometimes there was a message in one of the channels and I was like, oh, somebody spoke while I was sleeping. And now I open I opened Discord and I was like, oh man, there's just too much going on. Like I can't even keep up to date myself. Crazy.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to follow even everything going on in the One Hive community, let alone the like extension of all of these communities that are sort of working together. And you kind of have people that become bridges between the two. It becomes sort of this like big like social network to a certain degree, where you end up running into the same people, but like everybody has kind of their own affinities in terms of where they spend their time or allocate their scarce attention, because nobody can keep track of everything. Nobody can be everywhere at once.
Yeah, that's why we need these meta systems. But yeah, we need to do it inside our communities first. And like, how are you doing that? Like, how are you keeping your members informed?
I think that it's an evolving process for sure. One of the initiatives that somebody's taken on is a weekly recap, and they kind of come into each of the working groups and then they sort of ask for updates. And most of the working groups keep like meeting notes, and they kind of keep tabs. So when the guy that's curating the or collating the information into sort of more of a summary format comes along, they've got something to show them. We also started a wiki, so all the projects have a place to kind of keep high level information, but it's really hard. Like it's difficult to manage disparate communication channels. We've got a presence on Twitter, we've got a presence on Reddit, we've got a presence on Telegram, and pretty much everything happens on Discord. We've got our discourse, but like even within the community, it's hard to like be in all of these different places. And so figuring out like how to summarize and bubble up information is a kind of ongoing challenge that I don't think we've got quite right. I'd be curious to see kind of what that looks like on the metagame side, because I try and keep up, but I definitely miss a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy. Like, do you have a newsletter?
We don't have like a Substack or anything. We have like a forum thread that gets updated each week, but we probably should create like a newsletter of some sort, because again, like it's difficult to reach people if you require them to go to a new space. So if they can just subscribe via email, that might extend our reach.
Yeah, I think that was like a big game changer in metagame. Like at first it was just me writing updates in Telegram or on Discord, but then like as more and more people join, like I think you really need a newsletter for people to stay in touch, like because they're not all going to come to Discord or the forums to read, but if you get to them through their inbox, like that's something. And yeah, we have this on Mondays Champions Ring, which is like 14 people that are each leading initiatives or projects inside metagame, and then we meet and have like answering questions like what did you do last week, what are you going to do next week, this week, and what do you need help with. And then on Wednesdays we have like an open office sort of thing for people to talk about different raids and like solve the roadblocks together on like pair programming, things like that. And then on Fridays we have a more general community call where we try to either invite some awesome people like we're doing this week, getting in One Hive on. But yeah, we're gonna touch on that in a bit.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. Or yeah, try to get anybody else to like talk about anything interesting. If somebody interesting joins the community, then we can ask them, hey, do you want to talk about your expertise on this community call? Things like that. But yeah, mainly these voice calls and newsletter, and between them the person who transcribes the Monday calls and writes it in Discord.
Can I ask you, how do you guys approach roadmaps? Because this is a topic that has come up for OneHive quite a bit. We don't really have a roadmap. We just sort of set milestones because initiatives can come from so many different places and people can take different things on, and loosely affiliated in some cases. There are things that kind of build on other things. Because it's a bottom up decentralized structure, like kind of top down roadmap has never really made sense. But so many people outside of the community crave that kind of like information, right? They come looking for a core team, they come looking for a roadmap that has like a clear plan. They want the order.
And do you have any kind of like project manager sort of roles, like people that just make sure that there are issues being written and like spec'd out and things like that?
We don't have a very formal role system. It's very much at the level of working groups. So each working group can, we call them swarms, can sort of organize as they deem appropriate. And so the Buzz swarm that's sort of more kind of marketing and communications oriented has their own kind of process. I think they have like a Trello board, and Dosh is sort of like the kind of the main coordinator, I would say. And then we've got like more development oriented swarms. The swarm working on Celeste uses ZenHub for tracking issues, and Will is kind of like doing most of the coordination. But we don't have like a very structured role system. Like I wouldn't point to anybody and be like, this guy's the PM for this thing. But we totally could do that.
Yeah, well, we're more leaning to that side, like just so that we have people like closing this feedback loop, because otherwise like things just often don't happen. Rather than having like a leadership team that's like, okay, these are the people keeping track of everything. Rather than that, we'd have like multiple roles that can be taken up by anybody who joins. For example, I just added a role called Shepherd, and his role is just to check the raid channels and see if the conversation stopped, and if it did, like then ask, hey, what's the status of this project? Or like contact the person who's connected, like a lead of the project, and ask them like, how are things going? Do you need help with anything? So like a bunch of dedicated roles like that can, people don't like need to apply for a role or anything like that. You just read the role description and you can just do it. Yeah, they're more like pointers. There's no like you can't really claim a role and like need to apply. You just do it.
Yeah, I really like that approach where people don't ask permission. But I think that having that structure there in terms of like role descriptions probably makes it a lot easier for people to step up and gives them permission without giving them permission. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it just gives a good overview.
I think a lot of people struggle to be like, this is how I want to contribute, or like kind of negotiating their place if they have to. But if it's completely like something that anybody can just start doing, and there's this expectation that that's kind of what happened, it makes it a lot easier.
Right. Yeah. And in terms of the roadmap, we don't really have one. Or actually, I did write like a mega issue which explains like my vision for what we should be building, but it's more like a vague list, not really nothing set in stone. When people take charge of things, they are free to make changes, and I just lay out basically what I think, what my vision is, and then like I can't really force anyone to follow it, and then people just do it if they like it. They suggest improvements or whatever. I'm not tied to anything that I write, and yes, sort of things sort of move roll like that. But I have started looking for like somebody dedicated to do project management on like just making sure that, like for example, the mega issue threads keeps breaking down into like separate issues that are more like better explained, that pull requests are getting reviewed, and you're just generally staying on top of things. not in a like a bossy sort of way, but yeah, just closing the feedback loops and kicking the can down the road. Yeah, and how are you managing? Like, you don't have any kind of membership system, so that's interesting. And you are using SourceCred, at least to a degree. I'm not sure, like, if you're running everything through SourceCred or through what you were running it previously with conviction voting. How did you manage with like this influx of new people?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a challenge because we just have like a token called Honey, and anybody who has it is, I guess, a member if you have a concept of membership. Anybody who joins the Discord, like a part of One Hive, we have this sort of saying that we are all One Hive because it's a very open kind of structure, which is really powerful from the fact that like it can be completely open and transparent and anybody can kind of see what's going on and they can get involved, and the barrier to participation there is really low. You don't have to like submit a membership request or anything like that. But it's also challenging because you kind of have these like waves where you get influxes of new people. We had a pretty like big run up in price late last year. There was a massive influx of people, a like massive increase in the price, and it was sort of like a step change from like a relatively small, very tight knit dev community that have been working pretty closely together for the most part for quite a while. And then all of a sudden we went from like a couple hundred people in our Discord and a handful of like people kind of consistently contributing, probably less than 20. And now there's over 10,000 token holders. There's almost 5,000 people in the Discord chat. And a lot of them have like very negligible amounts. We had like the faucet, like relatively small levels of commitment. But the number of people that are kind of consistently contributing and like taking kind of leadership roles and joining like working groups and pushing things forward is sort of steadily increasing over time, and maybe even has continued to accelerate as the like price has gone down and the increase in people has gone down. So I think there's sort of this ebb and flow that kind of happens in these communities, kind of what we see on sort of a macro scale with Ethereum and like bull markets, where like price creates a lot of attention, brings a lot of people in, they learn about it, they go down the rabbit hole, and then like things like bull markets don't go on forever. Things kind of settle out. Some people like lose interest, they go elsewhere, but the people that stick around continue to build, and then in a really good position for sort of the next cycle. And so there's kind of like no concept of membership, but like as you engage, as you like earn honey or you buy it and you kind of go down that like commitment funnel, there's definitely like a gradient there of people that have checked in once to get an airdrop versus the people that are in the chat every day earning source cred through like our Holland initiative, joining working groups and kind of getting paid to work on things, or even just sort of like buying honey and participating in the process and following along in the project. And it takes time for tokens to like move, even though they're transferable. People hold on to them. They have to kind of transfer from one person to another, and that kind of takes time. So instead of having like a explicit like membership boundary, you're a member, you're not a member, you have reputation or you don't have reputation, it's a much more like permeable gradient. Like you're going to have skin in the game and can influence proposals if you buy tokens, but you're not going to have the same reputation in the community to get support and trust from other community members if you haven't been actively engaging or interacting.
Right. Yeah, that's good. And I guess like the Lambo people, they just come in, they ask about a token, they like see that it's not pumpamentals, it's like for actually building things, and I guess they lose interest.
Yeah, I mean it's a big filter, but I think that like pumpamentals and like Lambo people are totally welcome. In fact, they're probably also contributors, right? I know in metagame there's a patron role, and that represents people that hold tokens, and I think that's really important because it's easy from the perspective of somebody's building or like contributing labor to like really undervalue the contributions of speculators and capital providers. But this doesn't work as sort of a sustainable thing if you're not having those people involved, and those people like do have like an interest in seeing their token value increase over time. Like there's speculative intent, and at least in the One Hive side, I think everybody is really aligned around that, and I expect that it's the same in the metagame side. So like I think that there's a difference between the person that comes in and says like win Lambo and doesn't really add any value at all and is kind of annoying with the person that really just wants to support the project, buy tokens, provide capital, provide guidance, but isn't really in a place where they can kind of consistently contribute or be in the chats 24/7.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not trying to group like investors slash speculators with like a Lambo boys, but yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, it's just there's so many of these things that are not easy to categorize because there's a broad spectrum. It's kind of like when we talk about decentralized projects, there's so many different vectors of decentralization and so many different degrees that like if you just say this is decentralized or not decentralized, you've missed big nuanced part of that discussion that will have a lot of like actual implications. I think that like there needs to be a balance between speculative interests and people that are like really interested in building, because if that's skewed too far one way or the other, or your distribution's way out of whack, then the people that are building don't feel like they're like getting kind of the fair side of the deal because they're just making these speculators super rich and vice versa. Speculators see that like funds are just being used to fund passion projects for developers that have nothing to do with the thing, or people aren't actually delivering. Like there needs to be a balance there.
Yeah, if you neglect the speculators, like the builders will end up disappointed too, because like they need to get paid, like they need to be able to sell their token. And if they're not like, if there are no speculators incentivized to buy the tokens, like you just can't close that loop. Yeah, actually, the degrees of decentralizations is one of the points that I wrote down that we could touch upon.
That's one of my favorite topics. I'd love to touch on it.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, I've noticed that like One Hive has a way more like decentralized approach than metagame, just by the fact that you don't have a membership system and anybody's free to join. I saw that, for example, that post about trying to decentralize like the Twitter account management and like shilling in general, like marketing in One Hive. It's cool to see. And what are your thoughts on all of this and on like finding the balance between centralization and decentralization, and like where does it matter and where does it not?
Yeah, there's an article that I always kind of recommend when I talk about this topic by Gabriel Shapiro, LexNode, about defining decentralization for the law, where he talks about this concept of sufficient decentralization being an amalgamation of like the economic power, the governance power, economic power being kind of the distribution of tokens, the distribution of power in, say, like mining operations or staking, distribution of power in terms of like development and code bases, and how there's like each of these different vectors that sort of matter. And if one of them is completely centralized, it might be okay depending on the context, right? Like if you've got a centralized dev team, but all of your code is open source, everything else is reasonably well decentralized, then maybe you're sufficiently decentralized to really like remove some of the risk factors that you would kind of inherently associate with a centralized like project. You have information asymmetry issues for people that are like participating or investing. You've got issues where like it might be seen as a security because you're completely dependent on a third party. You've got issues of like rug pulls if there's a lot of concentration of economic power, for example. You've got issues of like minority protection and governance if you've got, and like representation if you've got a concentration of power and kind of governance stake, and governance stake has kind of a meaningful impact on things. So finding the right kind of balance to get to the point where you've removed information asymmetry, if you like have resiliency in terms of like individual members or like key kind of teams being hit by a bus one day, if things can kind of continue to progress, then I think you're starting to realize the value of decentralization. And if you don't get to that point, you end up making a lot of trade-offs to be decentralized that are like efficiency trade-offs. It's like much harder to coordinate as a decentralized group than like a small centralized like entity. It's much harder to come to consensus and make decisions. And so if you don't get decentralized enough to take advantage of that, like those elements of resiliency, those elements of like information asymmetry that sort of go away when you're sufficiently decentralized, then you don't necessarily get all the value. And I don't know if you can really go 100% decentralized. but getting further enough along on the vectors that like make a big difference, I think is really, really critical for these things to actually succeed. And like the worst thing you can do is sort of like have two optimal points and then pick the point in the middle that's suboptimal on like every every vector. So with OneHive, we kind of have the protocol itself and Honey, and we're trying to remove as much governance surface area there as much as possible. It's like a protocol with relatively few parameters that we could possibly fiddle with, and we want to like remove the ability to fiddle with that over time. And then conviction voting itself allows proportional representation, so you don't need a majority of voting power to get proposals passed. You need like a certain threshold of support over time, and it kind of manages the budget. And then from there, that's like the core of the protocol. And hopefully, like we're working on kind of a factory so that other people can bring tokens in and kind of use the same sort of conviction voting approach for resource allocation, or like issue their own tokens on the platform. But we'll eventually get there. But that becomes kind of the core. And then we've got the flexibility to distribute or reassign or create like more specialized processes on the edges. So like our use of source cred is actually a working group within the community that is relatively centralized. It's essentially a multi-sig of some of the community members that maintain the source cred instance. They have kind of complete authority to change source cred parameters and change distribution schedules and any of those rules, but their budget gets allocated from the DAO, from conviction voting. And so if they don't do a good job, if they like aren't really accountable, if it's not really working, we feel like source cred isn't serving our needs as well anymore. We just don't fund that swarm any longer, and the problem kind of rectifies itself or allows us to kind of negotiate and keep things accountable. But it also allows us to like say, oh, we have a need to subsidize liquidity on our HoneySwap fork. Let's create a farming initiative and fund that via conviction voting. Or we had this Bright ID based faucet, which is still kind of running, but we haven't funded in a while because we've just determined that it's not the highest kind of leverage place to allocate resources. So with our approach, we have a lot of flexibility on the edges to kind of make those centralization trade-offs. They can be distributed via smart contracts or via multi-sig, but because it's on the edges, it's still resilient. And like if any of those swarms disappeared, or any of the people in those swarms disappeared, it wouldn't be a catastrophic issue for OneHive as a whole.
Right. Yeah, it's all about finding that sweet spot and having the backstops. Like you can have a centralized role, okay, that person is centralized for that. But yeah, maybe he can just be voted out, or like the funds cannot be allocated to him if he starts acting weird.
Yeah, it's great to be able to give people individual autonomy and the authority to like make their own decisions. Like if you're constantly having to seek consensus amongst a like large and growing community, nothing gets done. And we see that in like really large communities. Any sort of change becomes kind of this like entrenched political like debate for doing anything like significant. And that's in some ways kind of a feature, right? If you're making decisions that are going to affect a large group of people, they should be kind of slow to change because you want people crave predictability. They crave kind of consistency. But a lot of things you want to be able to take really rapid, quick action, and the people involved in those decisions should have a lot of like context that you can't really get get everybody. Even if you wanted to reach consensus on a large group, you can't really get everybody that context, and it wouldn't really be efficient for them or anybody else. So finding ways where it's safe to delegate authority to individuals or small groups, I think is really valuable.
Right. Yeah, it's funny how the autonomy and the decentralization kind of clash, because you need to be able to give people autonomy for them to like feel good about doing things, but then that creates centralization in those people.
I guess depends on kind of where you're zooming out in this picture of decentralization and the different vectors. But I don't think that like from the perspective of like a DAO like Metagame or OneHive, having individuals that have specific authorities or roles takes away from the decentralization as a whole, sort of adds to it, right? It's not necessarily that these roles are always redundant or that they have lots of people participating in the decision-making process, because that is slow and inefficient in many ways. but it's that the decisions don't impact or don't destabilize the entire thing. And figuring out how to like regulate that process is kind of what we use conviction voting for. But like it's as much a social thing as it is a technical thing, right? Like you can have the same protocol or the same technology, but if you don't have the social side of things, the culture, the narrative, all of that stuff that really like helps coordinate people and gets them to work together, the tech's not going to get you anywhere. And this is why like Bitcoin is amazing and has this huge community, but like all of the forks of it are pretty much worthless because you don't have that culture or history. You don't have the norms that have built up over time that go with it. They go like and couple with that technology. Like there's a couple of DAO frameworks now, right? There's Aragon, there's Mulek, there's Colony launching. We're trying to make a factory for conviction voting based DAOs, and you've got like the compound governance structure. But if you just fork the code and you don't have a community or a mission or a set of values or shared beliefs that like bring people together to create value together, you just have code that's just going to sit on the blockchain and it's like not really worth anything. And anybody can fork code, right? But you can't fork community.
Yeah, you have a decentralized nothing.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how decentralized you are if nobody cares.
Right. Yeah.
How big is the metagame like community now? I know that you guys have a like artificial cap for season 1 on 300 people. Are you close to hitting that? And like if so, do you think that's going to cause disruption for people because you'll have like an in-group out-group dynamic?
We hit the player cap a while ago, like a few months ago, and we've been curating the membership, and that's been going good. Like it allows us to know which people we should focus on and try to get engaged, because we're really trying to build like a tight knit community. Yeah, having that limit there helps. And but on the patron side, we still only have like 50 patrons or something like that. So we still need a bunch more patrons to hit the cap. And what was the second part?
What's the requirement to be a patron now?
You need to buy 5 seeds. You will also need to plant them eventually, but right now you just need to buy them. I mean, buy them and get accepted, because yeah, if you just buy them, you're not automatically let in by the Color Land bot. You still need to apply to join, say something about yourself. What was the other question?
Gotcha. Yeah. So it's not just random people popping in. Oh, I was just wondering if like there's a concern that it's going to create an in-group, out-group dynamic, and whether that'll cause problems or like whether it'll be beneficial. Because I think that's kind of like one of these trade-offs between sort of these more open communities versus the more closed, like membership-based communities, is that you get the creation of like people that are in the group versus out of the group. And even like within our like working groups, we've had this situation where like working group that kind of is responsible for moderating like our Discord and discourse and stuff like that is sort of like privileged role, because you need kind of high trust in order to be able to like moderate and have the privilege to like kick people from the server if needed or ban people. And so that's a sensitive thing. You can't grant that to everybody. But at a certain point, we've got a ton of community members that are doing moderation type responsibilities, that are participating and like helping to create culture. And there's this artificial barrier. You're a member, you're not a member. And then you get like these weird conversations like, well, why am I not a member and this person is? Because they've been gone for 2 weeks because they had like a family thing. And I guess I would see that the potential for the same sort of thing when you have an artificial cap on membership, right? You got in early, but like maybe life has changed your priorities and you're focused somewhere else, and somebody else who's outside of that loop is working really hard, but they don't have a spot.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And like one of the ways we're solving it is that we are not just kicking people, and we see with them like most of them like just plant their seeds. Like if they were inactive for a long time and they like don't have time to get active, they just need to plant a few seeds and they can stay as patrons. And then after we reach, like for example for the patrons, after we reach the patron cap and start kicking people off, they will like retain some of the access to Discord. They will probably just not have access to all the channels, and they would like get like the NFTs that they were like once they were like on the 10th spot or something like that. because we will have like each season will have its own achievements, and then we will have on when we release on next winter, there will be like the list will be finalized. But yeah, the people who came in and then dropped out will get their achievement for the fact that they were here, and then everybody will get invited back on to join in a full way once we open the platform for everyone. I see the platform as like the main way of scaling in the future, and for now, I guess the main way we will be scaling is through onboarding other guilds. So we have the 150 player cap, we have 150 patron cap, and possibly there will be like 50 or something guilders list. So like for the people that are building bridges between communities, that's something that you could be doing for building a bridge between one hive and metagame. And so we really look forward to scaling through like people starting their own projects and joining as projects rather than being just players of metagame. But
Yeah, that's something I'm really excited for, is figuring out the best ways to like build bridges between these communities and like enable people to create new communities that are sort of tapped into kind of this like existing network of other communities and cross-pollinating between them. Like I think there's a lot of like really interesting design space there from both a like economic perspective and a social perspective that like we're just starting to scratch the surface on. And I hope it's something that like Metagame and OneHive can collaborate on over time, because it feels like there's a lot of alignment there. And it's a good example, right? Like we both have tokens and currencies, and I think in the past, the kind of existence of these like economic assets, whether they're currencies or tokens, have created sort of tribes, and you see tribalism and like Bitcoin maximalists and like these sort of weird situations where like people socially and like personally and individually are very, very aligned, but they just don't end up working together because they happen to have like stake or kind of an affinity to a specific asset, and it becomes sort of like this like really stupid stupid barrier to prevent people from collaborating, when in reality hopefully we can figure out a way to use these things as tools to kind of encourage and motivate collaboration rather than kind of push things apart.
right. Yeah, a while ago we threw that idea that of having some kind of a meta coin that would be like a pool token for like seeds, honey, and whatever other community that we want to join. And yeah, I still think that will be a really cool idea.
Yeah, I mean, but I think that like you don't even really need a meta coin at a certain point if you just have almost like that's a logically centralized version of something that kind of can exist in a fully decentralized way, right? Like if we decided to create an initiative where we create a like honey seed pool on, I don't know, you guys use Balancer on mainnet, maybe on Balancer or like Uniswap on the XDAI side on HoneySwap would make sense. But like you create this like liquidity bridge, and when you do that, the tokens become kind of loosely connected. When one goes up, the other kind of naturally like pulls with it, because the pool trades the ratio, and vice versa. And so you kind of create this connection that like makes it a positive sum thing to help each other out and like find ways to coordinate and align, and rather than compete, because it becomes a positive sum thing. And I think that you can do that without having like a registry of these coins that are in the community, but rather each of them kind of be like a connection itself. So like Metagame can be connected to a bunch, including OneHive, but not every connection that Metagame makes will be directly connected to OneHive, and vice versa. You just kind of create these like network of community currencies, which is really, really cool because it creates all of these like positive sum relationships, but it also like allows communities as individuals, or like as individual communities to have their own asset that they can kind of grow an economy around, which I think is really important. You know, like I think one of the challenges with say like Ethereum maximalism or Bitcoin maximalism is you don't have this case where people that are like trying to do their own thing or have a little bit more autonomy can create an asset that helps them build an economy. It's like looked down upon by maximalists because they're like, why don't you use our coin? You know, if we can figure out a way where if you want to go create your own coin, that's cool. More power to you. If you want to build value directly in this community, that's cool too. We've got kind of ways to like ways to make things work regardless of kind of what the case may be, right?
Right. Yeah. Build more bridges. More bridges. Oh yeah, and like this is still just the economic level, and this is until we have like more of the, I guess, better interfaces and things like that. And so I see this like going forward with, for example, the thing that we're trying to build, the Meta OS, or even just the my Meta profiles. Like if you have profiles that are fairly similar, and we just need to make it so that they're interoperable, that people can find the people from one hive through our interface, and yeah, search the profiles and see who are the people and contact them for joining the project or whatever. And similar with the Meta OS that we will be using to run metagame, but we hope that other guilds will also use it to like post what projects they are working on and try to find people through it. And yeah, building this common infrastructure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea. It kind of goes back to the start of the conversation in terms of like visibility and keeping up on all of the things happening. It's like figuring out the right levels of like surfacing this information. If there's like a project board across all of these communities that kind of becomes a hub, that's a great abstraction for especially the people that are kind of looking for gigs or jobs to kind of gather around. And if you kind of create a space for that and people and there's an audience, then it creates sort of a recursive loop where people want to like add their content to share with the audience, and the audience wants the content, so they go to that place. It'd be really cool to see.
Right. I actually did start working on something like that. I prepared. I'm going to share that. Something the listeners are unfortunately won't be able to see. But have you seen this navigation board that we have that we use for metagame?
Yeah, I think I have seen this. I've never fully made sense of it.
This is based on this donut economics thing, where like you can see like the things that we are doing too much of that are outside of here, and then the things that we are failing at, and like the optimal state of things is when they are on this green ring. Yeah, you can see how things are going. You can see like MetaOS not going so good these days.
Because it's too far out, right?
No, it's currently it's too close. When it's out of the ring, that means yeah, we changed it a bit from the donut economics model. But in our case, when it's outside of the green ring, it means we haven't like fully focused on it yet. We haven't actively started working on it yet. And when they're close, it means we started, but we are not doing good. And like for example, something could come in here, and then if it's something that's not really important, we can just kick it out. But if it's something that is really important, like the Meta OS, then theoretically it should start decreasing our this XP bar of the metagame as a whole. It's like the mana bar. But the point is that I started doing exactly this for the guilds, and this is what I plan on populating on the Guilders ring that we are going to have on Friday, which is how we're trying to build this bridge between the communities. Have you seen the message on Telegram?
Yeah, and I think I have it on my calendar as well for Friday before the One Hive community call. It'll be like a whole day. No, I mean I think it's like just before the metagame community call and then the One Hive cafe call, so it'll be like.
Oh right, oh right, right. Yeah. Oh damn, yeah, I didn't even think of that. So yeah, these Guilders ring calls will be recurring, and I hope to bring more active guilds. Right now, for example, like Penvala or like Common Stacks, they won't really have many projects that we can share. But yeah, I see this ring eventually having more DAOs that are like One Hive and Raid Guild, Build Guild, which are like more about building different projects than about being a specific project itself. I will try to make it a recurring thing where we bring people from these guilds together and we give status updates on what kind of project that we are working on and what we could use help with, and yeah, all of that.
Yeah, and vice versa too, like just finding ways to collaborate, right?
Right. Yeah. How many people do you usually get on these on your community goals?
It depends. So like we have a lot of ad hoc calls. We have like our recurring Friday call, and actually that usually is pretty quiet because it's like no agenda. It's just kind of hanging out. Um, and usually there's like 5 to 10 people, but sometimes you get 5 to 10 people in there, and then all of a sudden there's 20 because people just the cool thing about Discord is it sort of feels like a virtual space where you like see somebody online in a room and you can just hop in. Like it's pretty common to have like 14 or 15 people on kind of a random call. And so if we're sort of promoting it, and I know a lot of people are sort of interested to learn more about metagame, and I know the metagame community gets these big calls as well. So if we do a merger, it's very likely we might hit the cap, but we'll see.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be fun. Yeah, I don't really have anything else that I wanted to ask you, or at least not that I can think of now. I'll probably, after we end the call, I'll be like, oh, god damn it, should have asked him that. Yeah, what, how do we shield this? Have you wrote about it in the One Heart community already? Alright, yes, so let's just end it here, and yeah, we'll talk about some more awesome stuff on Friday.
Yeah, I think there's lots of like cool stuff we could talk about. The liquidity bridge, like community alliances, like that could be a fun topic. I think the My Meta profiles, I think there's a lot of like overlap there in terms of like ways to collaborate and like expose information in multiple places or like build on top of each other's work.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, thank you for joining us. And yeah, this was great. And looking forward to meeting you all on Friday.
Awesome, dude. Take care.
Yeah, see you.